Welcome to Jack Kirby, King of Comics, Mr. Russell Payne.
It's very kind. You have no idea who I am. Lovely to see you all. Thank you all for coming. This is the Jack Kirby King of Comics talk. My too close. I'm intimidating.
That's all right.
I'm a writer. I've worked for Happy Madison, BBC. Probably never seen anything that I've done. I'm here representing the Jack Kirby Museum today. It's an organisation that was set up in 2005 by a team of trustees that were Jack Kirby fans, including Jack Kirby's daughter, Lisa. And the idea was to just promote Jack Kirby's work, because there was a feeling that although his work is very enduring and influential, the legacy that he left isn't really attributed to his name a lot of the time. So we find that, as they say, everyone knows who Captain America is, but no one knows who Jack Kirby is. And that's really what we're here to address today. We're going to look a little bit about why people don't know his name, and also look at what we can do about it, and do a bit of a potted history. So if you're all massively knowledgeable about Jack Kirby, then you might find it a bit slow at the start, but then it gets very exciting. So if you're just patient, all your expectations will be realised. So who is Jack Kirby? If you go into school today, that's a scary photo, isn't it? I wouldn't like to be a teacher. If you go to school today and you ask kids of that age, who is Jack Kirby? This is the kind of response you get. Oh. So just to emphasise that point, there's the class before you've asked them to raise their hands to who is Jack Kirby. There's the class afterwards. Kids that age, although they might like the characters, they have no idea who the creator is. And I think that's fair enough, because I mean, when you were 5 or 6, did you have any idea who the artists were in the comics you read? And I mean, maybe a few of them. But what's a shame is other people sometimes take the credit. If I asked you guys here, do you know who Jack Kirby is? Raise your hand if you know who Jack Kirby is. Oh, bless you. I mean, I am at a comic convention, so I just think I would have just left if no hands had gone up there, because the world would have been wrong in so many ways. But you probably know who Jack Kirby is, and hopefully I'll be able to tell you a few things you don't know about Jack Kirby. He worked in the industry for an incredible amount of time, and he was quite a character over the time. He once attended a CAPS convention, the Comic Art Professional Society, in the mid-70s. And it was one of the first conventions where a lot of the artists got together. And this was before the internet, so people didn't have YouTube, they couldn't just look someone up on the internet. So his face wasn't that well known. And when he arrived at the convention and walked into the room full of the artists, he introduced himself as Ramon de la Flores, an Italian comic artist who specialised in erotic comics. And which is quite funny, but he perpetuated this. He went around for the first hour or so of the intro. He just went around talking to everyone, and he put on a slight Italian accent, telling them, yeah, I do the erotic comics. To the point where when the officials arrived and said, this is the guest of honour, Jack Kirby, half the artists didn't believe him. No, that's Ramon, isn't it? So, the guy had a sense of humour. And of course, he had an amazing creative ability that perpetuated over decades. Actually, what we're going to do now, I'm going to beg you for audience participation. We're going to go through some Kirby characters, and I want you to express with some sort of guttural roar how excited you are about each character and how emotional you feel about it. All right. So I don't want to spoil the surprise, but the next one's probably going to be the Fantastic Four. Fantastic Four, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be a long day.
Sue's invisible though, I see.
Well, she's invisible. Lovely Kirby background there, the photo montage. Kirby, of course, great Fantastic Four. And then Silver Surfer.
Hey.
Wow.
Hey.
Huzzah.
I love the different sounds we get for this. Inhumans.
Hey.
Hey.
X-Men.
Yes.
Original X-Men, of course. Hulk.
Yeah.
I'm just looking for the illustration. Spider-Man. Now you might say, Jack Kirby's been created Spider-Man. Why is that in there? Man's a fool. Doesn't know what he's talking about. But of course, Steve Ditko and Stan Lee attributed of creating, but Jack was there. And of course, that's the most famous image, isn't it, of Spider-Man that we see, Amazing Fantasy 15. Jack Kirby drew that. Have we all seen the one that Steve Ditko drew? That's Steve Ditko's cover for Amazing Fantasy 15. Oh, we love Steve Ditko, but he's not as good, is it? And that was rejected in favour of probably the most iconic image that you'll ever see. I think that's an interesting case in point about how Jack Kirby's name doesn't get out there, because that image, especially when the Spider-Man film first came out, the first time round, it's been rebooted again since, that image was in every newspaper. And really, when an image goes in any publication, it should have underneath art by. And a number of times that image appeared without Jack Kirby's name anywhere near it, and it actually appeared in a number of very high-profile newspapers with art by Stan Lee underneath it, which you know, always makes Kirby fans happy. Sergeant Fury? Yeah. Of course, Sergeant Fury becomes Nick Fury, who's an enduring character, isn't he? He might look a little bit different now in the Avengers films, but Kirby character. Thor!
Yeah.
Hooray! I like Thor. The Avengers.
Yeah!
Yeah! That was the best reaction I've had all day. Here's a fantastic Thor graphic novel for going yay for the Avengers.
Thank you very much.
Alas, the child in the Kirby film. Of course, all Kirby characters: Wasp, Ant-Man, Captain America, Iron Man, Thor. New Gods! Hey! Fourth World, Mr. Miracle, Very People, New Gods, Jimmy Olsen. Some might say I'm probably in that camp. Kirby's best work. He got free reign. It was his script, his writing, and one of the best stories. Pat, one of my favourites. So a lot of people are aware of Kirby fans, but maybe don't even know that New Gods exists. Well, great images from New Gods. Devil Dinosaur?
Yay!
I think Devil Dinosaur deserves more than that, but... Oh man,
Yay!
what a great cover that is. Look at that. You don't get comic covers like that anymore, do you? Demon?
Yeah.
You know, his speech bubbles missing. Yeah. It was supposed to be magenta and they didn't put the colouring plate in. So I think he should say, kill me. But he just said, nothing. He actually got published like that as well. But, Demon, Kirby character. She-Man?
Yeah.
2001, obviously, when it first came out, but Kirby character. Superman, Kirby character. No, just joking. When he took over the Fourth World, Jimmy Olsen, and he resurrected Newsboy Legion, some of the old characters he did. That's one of my favourite Kirby covers, for a number of reasons. Character in the middle, anyone know who the character in the middle is?
Don Rickles.
Good man, yeah. Don Rickles, quite a relatively famous comedian in his time. You probably know him now, just the voice of Mr. Potato Head in the Toy Story films. So he's still knocking around, he's quite old. In this comic, Don Rickles appears in the comic, and so does Don Rickles' good evil twin, Goody Rickles. Crazy story. But I think the interesting thing is, big picture, big black and white photo on the front, doesn't say anywhere on the front of the cover who the man in the photo is. Isn't that crazy marketing? Celebrity endorsement, forgot to mention his name. Nice, usual Kirby, lack of exaggeration, rushing towards the greatest climax ever seen in comics. And if you read the comic, you'll know that's true. And the bit at the top, Kirby says, "Don't ask, just buy it." Isn't that? I think that sums up so much of Kirby. Absolutely one of my favourite covers. I'm probably alone. I don't know. It's not the sort of thing you get put on a t-shirt, is it? But I like it. I think it's great. No one's wearing it.
Yeah.
Mandy.
Yeah.
Yay! I like it when people have the courage to shout out. It's fantastic. So I can tell there's quite a few of you wanting to go, whoa, yes, but you're a bit shy. Don't be, we're all friends here. Captain Victory!
Yeah.
Oh, come on! I really, really like Captain Victory. It was towards the end of Kirby's career. But I think what's interesting about that is that he was still, after decades and decades of doing comics, he was firing off ideas all over the place. And although it has its faults, he had characters such as Paranex, the fighting fetus, a giant, unborn cosmic warrior. Now, Kirby wasn't a young man at this point, and he was still coming up with ideas like that. And again, that sums up Kirby. It just, you didn't expect, when you were reading the comic, you thought, it's not like, it's the fetus. Great. Not a major character in the Kirby, but one of mine. So, Jack Kirby, I mean, we went, that was a whistle-stop tour of literally a dozen or so characters. Kirby created hundreds and hundreds of characters, as we know. He essentially created the Marvel Universe Submariner aside, obviously. And before he did that, because he wasn't actually all that young when he started FF #1, the Marvel Age started. He had a very successful career in comics with his partner Joe Simon. In fact, if he'd never joined the whole Stan Lee House Ideas thing, he still would have been a really credible, influential author of comics. He essentially invented romance comics with Joe Simon. At the end of the day, romance comics sold millions of copies, which is unheard of today. He invented a genre. It was incredibly successful. And this was before Stan Lee was working in the tea rooms. We forgot to go Ray.
Right.
Romance comics.
Right.
Thank you. Romance comics, if you look back on them, there's some beautiful art in there. And a lot of the Marvel artists that draw superheroes, the women are only so good in those superhero comics because they cut their teeth drawing the romance comics. You don't see them so much now, do you? It's a shame. Newsboy Legion? Yeah. Captain America.
Yeah.
Captain America #1. You probably all know this, but a lot of people don't. That Captain America was created by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby a long time before the Avengers when he was thawed out. They didn't make him up when he was thawed out. He was a very popular character around the time Hitler was very busy. Of course, Jack fought the Nazis for real as well. You know, he was an actual soldier, and there's the famous cover #1 where he belts Hitler in the face. Which is great, isn't it? It's not simple, but it's a good cover. And Stan Lee, I don't want to knock Stan, but Stan, in the Captain America film, Stan gets a cameo. And I think if you say to people who created Captain America, a lot of people, even if they know about Kirby, say, well, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. It was Stan Lee and Joe Simon. Stan Lee had nothing to do with issue 1 of Captain America. I think issue 4 of Captain America, he had a prose piece in the back, because he was working for Kirby as a relatively young man. Was it number 6? I think you'll find in number 6, he had a prose piece in the back of...
We'll cut that out.
He came up with, just edit that bit out. And they came a bit way through the Shield, I think Stan came up with that, which, credit to him, but he wasn't the creator in any way, shape or form. And aside from comics, he did all sorts of crazy things. Have you heard about the Lord of Light and the Argo thing? There was a film recently, wasn't there? There was a book by Roger Zelazny called Lord of Light that was opted into a film that never actually got made. And the guy that did the special effects for Planet of the Apes was involved, and Kirby did the, not the storyboard, but like the concept drawings for it. And it was a very ambitious project. It was going to be this film about all these crazy science fiction, pseudo-religious images, and it was going to be made into after the film was done, the sets from the film were going to be used and made into a theme park. A Jack Kirby theme park. How great. It was going to be called Science Fiction Land. I really want to go there. If anyone has a few $1 billion and fancies building it for me, how great would that be? I mean, you can kind of see why it didn't happen. It's very easy to take a big bit of paper and draw these things, but genuinely the idea was to make this marvellous high-budget film and then make the set into a theme park. It got cancelled before it got into production. But then, of course, the information from the film, the storyboards Kirby did, were like used in a CIA plot to get some hostages out of Iran. Has anyone seen Argo in here?
Yeah.
Well, the thing that I think annoys me most, that Kirby's done all these things, he created all these characters, he was a great guy, very influential. And really, when people say comics, the next breath, they should be talking about Jack Kirby. He should really, and I don't mean this as a disrespect to any other artist or writer, he is top of the game because he created more of the ideas and the characters, not just the characters, the form, the style. People copied Kirby's style for years, the way he told stories. And say if you say who's the most famous scientist in the world, who would we say?
Einstein.
Yeah, Einstein. And that's true of a lot of subjects, isn't it? I hope this is one of those things that could fail horrendously when you all say people I've never heard of. But computing.
Jury.
Steve Jobs.
You're all much more highbrow than I am. I have Bill Gates. Oops. But yeah, Steve Jobs, Turing, Bill Gates. There's two or three people at the top of the field that come to mind, isn't there? We'll all agree on this one. Football.
Maradona.
Pele.
So I had Kevin Keegan. But I'll admit I don't know a lot about football, but I had a ruler with Kevin Keegan on. And it's, to be honest, the only footballer I've heard of. Rock and roll. Hey! King of rock and roll. Boxing.
Muhammad Ali.
Yeah. That's a great Kirby, Muhammad Ali. I think that's possibly in Kirby's reference file somewhere. Comics.
Animal.
Stanley. The majority of people, Smiling Stan. That's the name that comes to the fore, isn't it? Comics, if you know a little bit about comics, Stan Lee. And I guess that, he said Stan Lee presents in a lot of comics, and he's got the cameos in the Marvel films, and Stan, to his credit, is excellent at self-promotion. You think about comics, you think about Stan Lee. I think it's a little bit of a shame that we don't think about comics and think about Jack Kirby. Or maybe Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, but Kirby's name is in no way as prominent or as well known as Stan Lee. This isn't anti-Stan talk, we're just going to be nice about Jack. We're going to put Stan to one side. But why isn't Jack Kirby as well known as Stan Lee? Why don't these kids, when you ask them, all two or three of them at least, go, oh, he created Captain America. Oh, that Avengers film, that was Jack Kirby. They all have Avengers lunchboxes and Captain America backpacks and Hulk trainers. That's all I had a Hulk watch recently. I really wanted it, but it was too fast. But there's some great merchandise out there. Well, the majority of the kids that are wearing it, head to foot Jack Kirby, don't know who he is. I think that's a pretty unusual circumstance, isn't it? If you're a big Harry Potter fan, you know who J.K. Rowling is. If you're a big Lord of the Rings fan, you probably know who Tolkien is. And they were creators that created probably one franchise, one lot of memorable characters. Jack created hundreds. Do we know who this is? Oh, you're a great audience. Why isn't he well known when he's got so many influential fans? When he was alive and after his death. Frank Zappa, big Kirby fan. A lot of Zappa's music references Kirby. Paul McCartney, that's Kirby behind the scenes at a Wings concert. Beatles, Paul McCartney, big Kirby fans. Mentioned it in some other Titanium song sang by Paul. That's Jack giving Paul and Linda a piece of artwork he did for them all. Magneto and Paul and Linda McCartney. To Paul and Linda, best wishes, Jack Kirby. He was schmoozing with people that were top of the game in the industry. So it's not like it was a secret who he was. Alan Moore. I went to the flyers on his seats for the NICE convention this year. Went to the NICE convention last year. Alan Moore gave a talk. Brilliant talk about comics in general. We had a little section on, you know, how creators were treated. Big Jack Kirby fan, not such a fan of Stan. I recognises his influence and acknowledges it in his works. And he's probably, you might have different opinions, but he's probably one of the more influential writers today in comics. Big Kirby fan. Kevin Smith, director, comic writer, big Kirby fan. Gene Simmons, massive Kirby collection. Robin Williams, big Kirby fan. I think it's Robin Williams. It might be Robbie Williams, a big Kirby fan. But let's not get the facts get in the way of a very important point here. Jonathan Ross, enormous Kirby fan. That documentary Search for Steve Ditko, big comics fan in general. Got a big collection of original Kirby art, and it's not at TVs every week, isn't it? Nicolas Cage, obsessive Jack Kirby fan. Really, really big. Barack Obama there, reading the Pact. It's an absolutely false photo. But the leader of the free world, I'm sure, is influenced by Kirby in one way or another. Because we all are. I think even if you don't know who Jack Kirby is, because his characters have been so absolutely so for society, even if you've no idea who he is, wherever you are in the world, you've been exposed to a Jack Kirby idea or a Jack Kirby character. The last comic relief that was on, it shows the sort of starving children in terrible conditions people are in different countries. There was a lovely shot of some sort of happy kids that had been given supplies and things. Well, the kid ran past in a Captain America t-shirt. That's the absolute middle of nowhere, no water. We've got a Captain America t-shirt. Absolutely everywhere. His ideas and his characters have endured, but it's almost like his name has been swept under the carpet. There's a clue behind me, but why do you think this is?
Money.
Well done! Money! It's like subliminal message. Some people feel, and it's not necessarily my opinion again, but the reason Kirby's voice is sometimes swept under the carpet is that he did it as work for hire. He wasn't really given a lot of recompense for the work, and he wasn't particularly a company. He fell out with Marvel, and he didn't really get on that well with DC towards the end. Money's the reason. They want to keep hold of those characters, they want to keep hold of those franchises. They don't want to go Jack Kirby's Avengers, because that takes away from the Avengers and Disney and Marvel and Stan Lee. It's a theory. Kirby's family, recently, because Disney bought Marvel, have tried to sue Disney actually a year and a half ago, October, the same lawyer that did some of the Superman cases, trying to take legal action against Disney to say, well, these characters really belong with our father, and we should get some recompense for them, because although they were doing work for hire, it was a long time ago. And I'm not sure they were on shaky legal ground, but morally they were right, weren't they? The Kirby estates and Kirby himself and the Kirby family don't see anything for the billions and billions of dollars that are made by his characters. Last year, 2012, the Argo film came out. Who said they'd seen the Argo film? Hands up who's seen it. Okay, four or five of you. I talked about Science Fiction Land before and the CIA, that the Lord of Light film that was nearly made, they had a lot of props and storyboards and scripts for it. So the CIA, as a cover for getting these hostages out of Iran, renamed the film Argo, but used the same concept drawings Kirby had, and all the paraphernalia in the film, set up a fake production office. If you've seen the film, you kind of know the plot. And as a Kirby fan, we've known about this since probably the 80s. But a lot of the documents were released into the public domain, and we got a newspaper article, and Ben Affleck picked up the script. And I quite enjoyed the film. It's a good film, isn't it? But it's a little bit fast and free with the rules, the truth. It doesn't really mention at any point that there was another film that kind of gives the impression they made up the whole thing from scratch. But when the film was first announced, they announced that Jack Kirby was going to be in the film. And as a Jack Kirby fan, at last, this is perhaps it. We've had the Fantastic Four movie, and that didn't really promote his name, because we all thought it would. As a Kirby fan, I went out and bought the DVD when the film came out. So it was supposed to be a Jack Kirby storyteller documentary on it. Rushed out, bought the DVD in the UK. It wasn't on it. Okay. Then the special edition came out, and I went out and bought that as well, like a fool. It wasn't on that either. it was on the special edition in the US. I had to buy the Fantastic Four movie 4 times to actually get a documentary about Jack Kirby. The Jack Kirby promotion engine doesn't exist. There's a Jack Kirby hiding engine somewhere, maybe. Argo, film was announced. It said Jack Kirby's going to be played by an actor, that's Ben Affleck. There we are, Michael Parks, who was in Prisoner Cell Block H, wasn't he? No, he was in something. Anyway, Michael Parks playing Jack Kirby, got very excited and thought, we're going to have Jack Kirby on the screen. And even if it's playing a little bit hard and fast to the rules, I think in the film, what happens is, they imply that Jack Kirby is an artist that comes up with the storyboards to film on order. But the point is that the storyboards, and they didn't do storyboards, they did concept art, but the art by Jack Kirby is one of the pivotal moments in the film. Because the hostages, I don't want to spoil the film for you, but there's a moment in the film where the hostages are in a tight situation, and the art is used to convince the authorities that the film is real. Which isn't so far removed from the truth. I mean, the art was used as an absolute pivotal point in the hostage negotiation where they said, well, that is true, look. And the art, Jack Kirby's art, was so majestic and convincing that the Iranian authorities, well, oh, it must be true, there's no way the CIA have knocked up these. And they got through. And there's a lovely scene in the film where this all happens, but I don't want to spoil it for you. And actually, have we got time? What time is it now? We've got the script from Argo. We're not going to do the whole film, but we're just going to reenact the scenes that have Jack Kirby in the film. My colleague Daryl Till from Tiny Lapel Studios is going to play the artist, Jack Kirby.
Are you going to play Ben Affleck?
I do bear an uncanny resemblance to Ben Affleck, so I should be portraying the actor Ben Affleck. He didn't like me. Hey, can you make these drawings look a bit more Middle Eastern? What, like Egypt? No, more like Iran. Okay. That was it! that was all that Jack Kirby got in the film. His name was big in the credits at the end. He was on screen for about 4.5 seconds. I paid £6.50 to see that film. That's more than £1 a second to go and see Jack Kirby. Duh! It's so frustrating. And it's kind of the story of my life with Jack Kirby. Whenever you think something's going to happen that's going to promote his name, you get 4 seconds, or you get a missing documentary, or you get his name missed off it. The Avengers movie. Oh, we talked about the Avengers. Jack Kirby created the Avengers. The biggest superhero movie of all time. Broke box office records. Most of the characters, Kirby, let's see if I can get this right, Hulk, Iron Man, Nick Fury, Captain America, Thor, all Jack Kirby characters. Without Jack Kirby characters, the Avengers would have been Hawkeye, Black Widow, and that woman that's in S.H.I.E.L.D. It wouldn't be very good, would it? The biggest grossing superhero film of all time, the majority of the characters, Jack Kirby, millions of people have seen it, Jack Kirby's name, end credits, quite small. So what's going on now? His impact, the talk was originally called Jack Kirby's impact on modern culture. His impact, it's like a spider's web, it goes everywhere. 2012 we had Argo, Avengers. I did and this is hot off the press, I did a print out of IMDb on the Jack Kirby's name. So, and this isn't all the films, but IMDb picks up whenever someone says characters created by original idea by Jack Kirby. Iron Man cartoon in 2013, Iron Man 3 movie, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV movie, next Thor films coming out in 2013, new Captain America film coming out, new Fantastic Four film coming out, Ant-Man film coming out, Nick Fury film announced, Avengers 2 film coming out, there's another Spider movie out, there's the X-Men Origins Magneto movie coming out, There's an Inhumans movie in pre-production. That'd be great if it comes out, wouldn't it? There's X-Men Second Class coming out. Well, X-Men Days of Future Past. Not a Kirby story, but Kirby characters in there. That's 20 films based on Kirby characters, but no one's heard of him. Isn't that crazy? Star Wars Episode 7 coming out in 2015. Star Wars came out quite a bit after New Gods. New Gods, character called Darkseid, who has one of the main plot twists is that the good character turns out to be his son. And they use a power called the Source. I'll let you draw your own conclusions. Ross did a nice Kirby image recently. I don't know if you've seen that. I love that, it's nice. People are still riffing on his work. There was a series of comics by Ross and Kurt Busiek, Kirby Genesis. Anyone saw that? People are still, I don't use the word leeching, but this is very positive, is it? People are still using his ideas. Infinite Crisis with Grant Morrison used all Kirby characters. Kirby Genesis run reprinted Captain Victory as well. Throughout the history of comics since Kirby died, Secret City Saga by Topps, Mr. Miracle was, and all the New World characters were continued after this Kirby gave upon them. The character called Tom Scioli, Godland, and draws in a very Kirby-esque style. That's just comics. We've seen our movies are massive as well. So how can we get to a point where... Oh, sorry, I'm quite hot. Just take this off. Where can we get to a point where the kids in the class put their hands up? When can we get to a point where we ask a room full of children, who's Jack Kirby? And we see that. Well, that's where I got involved with the Kirby Museum. So I thought I'd been moaning about it. I've been a Kirby fan since I was young. I've been complaining to everyone I could meet that, why has no one heard of Jack Kirby? It's just not right. It makes me angry. For the best part of my life. What can we do about it? Well, we live in a technological age, don't we? When I found the Kirby Museum had been established, I got involved, I got in touch. The Kirby Museum exists to promote Jack's work. We have an original archive of Kirby work, both originals and digital. We go to comic conventions like this one, and all the big ones in the States. We take a big high-res A3 scanner, and anyone that's got Kirby art, we try and get a scan of it. If you join the museum, you get a little login, and you can browse some of that art. And if you're into the whole how much influence did Kirby have on the plot and the stories, it's really interesting to see some of that original art and look at the little notes in the margins, and you realise that an awful lot of the directions in the dialogue were written by Kirby in the lines. We're actually trying to raise $30,000 to get a pop-up museum. A pop-up museum is a museum that pops up. It's a temporary museum, and Kirby was brought up on the Lower East Side of New York, so we thought, what a lovely place to have a physical Jack Kirby museum. Because at the moment, the Jack Kirby Museum is a digital institution. It doesn't exist physically. And there's nowhere on Earth that you can go and see a gallery of probably the most influential creator in the world and just go and look at his stuff, which is mad, isn't it? There's a guy in Scotland that designs labels for different foods, and I can't even remember his name. There's a museum dedicated to him. You can go and look at his labels. There's no Jack Kirby museum. I'm sure they're very nice labels, but labels for milk cartons, multi-billion-dollar films. Doesn't make any sense, does it? So we're trying to raise $30,000. We've actually got about 17,000 at the moment, and that's one thing we do. And I'm going to be going around with a cap in a moment. But you can join the museum. It's $40 to join. You can join online using PayPal, and you get a print sent from the museum in the States, and you can choose from a selection of them, and you get a year's membership, and it allows you to get on the forums and look at it. Without spending any money at all, if any of you have social networking accounts, have a look at the museum website, kirbymuseum.org. You type Jack Kirby into Google. It's Wikipedia, I think, Jack Kirby, and the second one is the Kirby Museum, so it's dead easy to find. If you're on Twitter, follow the Jack Kirby Museum account, promote it to people. If you're on Facebook, whatever that is, you can click something to make it popular. There's all sorts of ways that we can make a difference. Because I think the scary thing is that the next generation are going to be even further removed from those experiences we perhaps had as kids of actually buying the Kirby comics and having, don't ask, just buy it, and seeing the Kirby name there. Because all the Kirby properties now, you don't really notice his name. I mean, actually, IMDb page that I printed out, on the first Avengers movie, on IMDb, it doesn't even mention Kirby. I mean, IMDb's not perfect, but I think that goes to show, doesn't it? That the guy that drove the trucks for the catering gets a mention on IMDb. Jack Kirby doesn't, and he creates all the characters. So, Twitter, I was hoping this part everyone would get the phones out and go, oh yes. Jack Kirby on Twitter, Facebook. We're also selling prints. This is an image of Kirby composed of thousands of his comic book covers from across his career, right from the romance covers, through his Marvel years, through his DC years, and they're all made into a composite image of his face. What a beautiful thing to have in your home. If you have any loved ones, that you know your anniversary's coming up, I don't think any wife would like to have that as a gift from her husband. And my wife's actually received this 5 years running for our wedding anniversary, and every year she cries a little. Think the tears of happiness. 2017, Kirby died in... No, sorry, Kirby was born in 1917. So in 2017, it's the 100th anniversary of his birth. And the Kirby Museum thought that would be a nice opportunity to make that bit of a year of activity for Kirby. So we're trying to build up to getting different artists doing renditions of Kirby works, perhaps putting a book together, hoping to get the museum physically running for 2017. And also 2017 is the year that quite a few of the movies are greenlit, the next stage of the Marvel run of movies. So what a great time, if any of you want to get involved. 2017 is the year, potentially, of Kirby. Now, there isn't actually a box, because I'm not very organised. But the idea is, who's the youngest person in the room? And I think I can probably guess it's either the gentleman that sat at the back in the brown coat, or the young man in the Spider-Man outfit. How old are you, sir? No, you, Tony.
61.
61. And how old are... 4. You win! Well done.
Thank you very much.
And hopefully that young man will grow up to be the last surviving last Jack Kirby fan on Earth. Like Commandy, but you won't know who he is yet. So, that's me done. Thank you very much for coming. Any questions? Any questions about the museum? Or my encyclopedic knowledge of Jack Kirby's creation of the Submariner?
Stupid question. Which issue was the fact storyline? Is that one of the new guys?
It was...
I can't remember.
I don't know what number it was. It was one of the New Gods issues. Anyone?
7?
Number 7, there we are. Number 7.
Sorry,
I thought it was the best. You could read it on its own.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the issue where there's the revelation about the relationship that's a bit Star Warsy. Yeah. I'm not spoiling out by saying that it turns out to be someone's son. It's a really nice issue. I think when people ask me sometimes of these things, what's a good place to start with Kirby? That's what I tend to say. It's a single issue that's pure Kirby. You know, there's no There's no influences from other editors or other writers. It's all Kirby, and it's a great little story on its own. It's a proper myth.
So the sort of seed of where everything, Apocalypse and Genesis and that agreement.
It's the seed of why the dark side and the High Father kind of have that shaky truce. Because they swap the sons, and the pact is about that pact. So it's a great place, and dark side's become quite a big smell in the DC universe, isn't it? He's being used. The Great Darkness Saga was really good. I only read that quite recently with the Legion. Great Darkness Saga uses dark side, and
you got to use Final Crisis.
Final Crisis, uses dark side.
In a strange way.
I find it quite confusing, but there was a lot of Kirby in there.
Oh
yeah. So Grant Morrison, big Kirby fan. He described Final Crisis as a love letter to Kirby, didn't he? Any more questions? How are we doing for time?
Nearly quarter to.
Oh, quarter of an hour to talk about Kirby.
Where would you hope the museum to be based? Where would you ideally like to base it?
Well, the plan is the lower east side of New York, which is where when Kirby was a kid, it was quite a rough area. But now it's quite well to do. It's quite, there is a lot of little boutique shops and little pop-up kind of museums and art galleries. It would be it's a nice kind of happy coincidence that where he grew up has become exactly the sort of place. There are availabilities for a nice pop-up museum. $30,000 isn't that bad.
No.
$30,000 doesn't seem much to buy.
I think it's a year. We're not actually able to build a building or occupy a building. So yeah, it's basically, I mean, hopefully longer, but 30 grand will guarantee us a year's worth of at a location in the Lower East Side. And hopefully it'll snowball. I mean, once it's open and the word gets round and people go, we just need the wall space. And it's that nice local link, isn't it?
I'm surprised that Marvel DC didn't sort of put something towards that.
Well, I think the issue there maybe is that the Kirby estate are suing Marvel at the moment, so there's not a terribly good relationship there. And as we've talked about for the last 3/4 of an hour, Marvel more than DC, to be honest, because DC has put out some really nice digest lately of Kirby stuff. But there's a reticence, it seems, to really promote him. No one wants to really fly the Kirby flag. I think there's an awful lot of people that work in these companies that are big Kirby fans, and with the best of intentions would love to do more, but they don't want to set a precedent of saying, Kirby's great, Kirby created all these characters, oh, we didn't pay him anything. Because then because it's made the New York Times not so long ago that the family is suing Disney, there's kind of a conflict there, isn't there? So I think legally they're probably, and this is me speculating, but they're probably advised when they go to the editors and say, I've got a great idea, let's build the Jack Kirby building and Marvel can sponsor it, and people go, it's not really, what we want to do is promote the films and promote the franchises and make sure everyone knows the characters, and they don't see, if they were interested in promoting the Kirby name, I wouldn't have just given you all those examples of why no one knows Jack Kirby. And that, I don't think that's the only reason, but that's certainly a driving force behind it, isn't it?
You see Stan all these things about it. Stan all this.
I think that's fair, yeah, you see a Stan Lee interview. I've never seen Stan badmouth Jack, and I know they had a pretty ropey relationship towards the end. They did fall out on quite a personal level. I think there was a reconciliation of sorts. I've heard stories that there was a hug at a comic convention, in his later years, and on a personal level there was some making up, but there was certainly a lot of bitterness, and I think it was partly over the whole relationship with who's getting the credit. I heard a story where Greg Theakston, the guy that was Jack's assistant in his later years, Jack couldn't drive anymore, because when Jack drove, he was so full of ideas, he was known to crash into things. So he'd be driving and think, hey, fetus! So he wasn't allowed to drive, he used to have his assistant drive for him. And they drove past this, I think they were dropping us off to get something, and they stopped outside this toy store. And the toy store was full of toys and action figures that were Kirby characters. And Greg was like, hey Jack, let's get a kick out of going in and seeing what seeing what I've done. And Jack didn't want to, because he said, oh, it upsets me, because I go in there and I see my ideas and my characters, and I've had nothing to do with any of these things that the shop's full of, and I don't see any money from it. And it did upset him. And I think, from reading all of the different accounts, it wasn't so much the money, although he was a real family man, and his work ethics, he worked for 7 decades. His work ethic was very much providing for his family. But the thing that upset him was the characters had been taken off him, and he wasn't allowed to finish telling the story. And everyone else... He was actually, towards the end of Marvel, he was treated quite badly by a lot of people that kind of saw him as the old man, and he was ready to move on. And he deserved more respect. And it's sad that in his later years, he I feel it on a certain level. You know, when I go into a shop and I see all the Kirby characters, it frustrates me a little bit that none of them, you look at the packaging, nowhere does it say Jack Kirby. And imagine how Jack Kirby would have felt. Imagine how you feel if you just created one character and you were really proud of it and you had real fondness for it, and it became a smash hit, and there was a movie about it, and there was action figures about it, and everywhere you went, you saw it, and you're going, hey, I created that. You get sick of people saying, did you? Really? I've never heard of you. It's supposed to be really annoying. But Jack just didn't just do it. Well, I can hear Dark Side. Jack didn't just do it with one character, he did it with thousands. So imagine that feeling multiplied into an entire toy store full of your ideas. You're not getting any credit for it. So, I forget what my original point was there. I straight into it. What was the question?
Why do more with DC papers?
Yeah, I think it's always been the case that they're in it for the money, and if you set a precedent by giving Jack too much credit, then it kind of shines a light on the fact that he wasn't really giving the recognition.
Do you think that's the same for all artists and writers?
It's certainly not an unusual story, is it?
I must admit myself, my son is cycles come along more of an interest. But I, as a child, used to read all this, but I was never really interested in who wrote it. I was just interested in the story.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe that's where people should change.
I think that's fair enough, because I mean, I probably read the Beano and the Dandy when I was younger, and although now I know who the artists were, at the time we were a child, as a young kid, you don't know who they are. But as you get older, you tend to become a little bit more, and if you really like something, and for instance, you say, oh, I read a few comics, I know. Well, but if you read a few comics and you saw a few films, and it was everywhere, you would expect to know a little bit more about it. Although it's certainly the case for a lot of artists, I think Jack Kirby is absolutely top of the pile for the one that gets the least recognition for the most work. And doesn't belittle all the troubles other artists. I know the Ghost Rider guy had all sorts of problems like this, didn't he? He was stopped from doing sketches at Ghost Rider conventions, which he's been doing for years. And there's so many stories in the comics world. Jack Kirby did a comic called Destroy a Duck. Anyone heard of that? It was Steve Gerber had a big wrangle about Howard the Duck. So Jack and Steve got together and Destroy a Duck. It was a talking duck. It was a bit similar to Howard. It's always been a problem, and it's certainly not unique to Jack Kirby yet. I think, and it's not just in comics either, to be fair. It's any creative person that's successful often signs some sort of contract that says, here's my work. And there's two arguments, isn't there? So you might say, well, it's time to get away, then it's the company you're investing in. But I think morally there's an argument to say, if your characters, in Jack Kirby's case, are so successful that they are the highest grossing form of entertainment in the world, you deserve a little bit of recognition. So, although I think that's the case with every artist, Jack is absolutely head and shoulders the biggest case of lack of recognition. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but there's obviously an effort somewhere to keep his name a little bit under the radar. Because when you start to look into all the things he did do, he absolutely influenced. You can't go in any shop in a high street And within 1 or 2 shops, you'll see a Kirby character. Probably the first shop you go in. It'll be a card shop where they'll have Avengers cards. It'll be a newsagents where there's Avengers stationery. It'll be a cake shop where there's a Captain America shield on a bun. You know, it's just absolutely everywhere. Yes.
Does the museum have an idea of how much of all of Jack's work that is still around? You know, the kind of vast amount of pages. And
There's no definitive count, but we know that over his career he did tens of thousands of pages, and a lot of it isn't around. He had a real problem getting his art back off Marvel. There was a big fuss where Marvel made him sign something, and he got like 80 pieces of art back, something disgraceful. And his art got ferreted off, which is a bit stupid, because original art, when you steal it, you know, it's original and it's one-off, so you know it's stolen. But if you keep it for long enough, people forget and it moves on. There's a lot of Kirby art on the black markets, makes it sound a bit more mafia than it is, but there's a lot of Kirby art, yeah, that went missing or was stolen, and Jack didn't benefit from it, because it was just, art didn't used to be given away, you know, it used to put in skips, it didn't used to be seen as valuable. But when it became realised that the art was selling for a lot of money, that's when people started helping themselves. And Jack was such a nice guy. People used to go to his house, fans, knock on his door, and his wife Ros would let them in, make them breakfast, and would leave for free art. You know, it's if we could travel back in time. Yes.
No, I wasn't putting my hand up. I was saying 5 minutes.
One more question?
What are you saying about Jonathan Ross and Nicolas Cage and my profile being Kirby fan?
Yeah.
As a museum.
I wrote to Nicolas Cage.
Or their agents and
yeah.
profile who could.
Didn't get a reply, but the guy from Starburst interviewed me at Cardiff and suggested just that. He said he'd done a thing with Nicolas Cage and had his details. He lives in the UK.
So they got Jonathan Ross at Cal last year.
Yeah.
Table and so forth.
Yeah, it would be nice. We have trying to put the feelers out. If someone that hadn't wanted to give a large sum, maybe they could have a bit of a Nicolas Cage room, you know, in the gallery, you know, sponsored by.
Yeah, tell them you could put,
It's not a tremendous amount of money. It's a lot of money to me, but yeah, if you
try and persuade them, so they get a little picture of them. Sponsored by, paid for by.
Well, that's kind of my point. Before when I went through all the famous people, it's odd, isn't it, that he had so many famous people he was got on quite well with, and that were big fans of his. But that support doesn't. No one's really championed his cause, and they don't have to. I mean, I'm not going to go with Paul McCartney for not setting up the Jack Kirby Museum, but there were a lot of people that were that gained from Jack's work by getting influences, but no one seems to take his cause, which is why the point is, the future's in our own hands, we're masters of our own destiny, and the Kirby Museum is something you can get involved in. But this isn't a money-raising drive. What I'd really like you all to do today is take away that bit of information, and I think most people already have, but get on Twitter, get on Facebook, get on the website, and just try and keep that legacy alive and let people know that Jack Kirby was as great as he was. I think our time's up, so thank you very much for coming.